Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Thursday, the 16th of March. I'm glad to see you. I'm recording from a different position. I'm in my office and I have been hesitating about recording this. It's late Wednesday night that I'm doing this and um, considering how to approach this topic, and been sitting in the office trying to figure this out and thought, I need to do this. So um, I'm joined here by Fred. Fred is my my little hope bear. He is from the Anglican Church, Anglican Foundation. He's got a little gingham tie here. Isn't he beautiful? But this is Fred, and he's going to keep me company today because I want to talk about something pretty heavy. I want to talk about suicide. Yesterday morning, when I first got up and was publishing my Church at Home for Wednesday, on my Facebook, a colleague friend of mine in the diocese had shared a post about an Anglican priest in England who was 44 years old and who had died by suicide. And from reading the article that was presented about her from her diocesan paper online, it seemed like she was a fantastic priest. She was a canon in the church. She was a wonderful preacher. One other priest said she's the kind of priest that reminds me how to be a good priest. She was married. I don't know if she had kids or not, but she left behind a husband who loved her dearly. And there's that gut punch. You see something first thing where you may not even have known the person, but to hear that someone felt such despair or something was going on in their life that presumably no one really knew about, that they would take their own life. And I think it's something that we need to talk about. As a matter of fact, earlier this week at a book study, we were talking about sin and the idea of, we brought up the fact that the people for a long time, there were some people who thought that the only unforgivable sin was suicide. And we talked about, it isn't, by the way, as far as I'm concerned. It seems to be a sin against this Holy Spirit. And I don't think that you would say that suicide was that. But as we talked about the fact that some cemeteries, hopefully in the past, I don't know if people still do this, but people who die by suicide would be buried on unhallowed ground, on non-sanctified ground, because it was the ultimate slap in God's face. It was the ultimate thing you could do wrong. And I think we need to step back about that. One of the things that I'm learning through the years is, it used to be we died, someone committed suicide, and now we talk about the language we even used to talk about was they died by suicide. They died of cancer. They died from a car accident. They died by suicide. I don't know why, but for me anyway, it removes this. It removes for me the sense that this person did a horrible thing to themselves, the how dare they factor. If someone feels so desperate in their life and so unable to continue on, the worst thing I think we can do for them up until that moment before they have died, and carrying on into the moments after they have died, into the lives we all share without them, is to carry something that somehow belittles them or denigrates them because they didn't have the strength to carry on. Lots of us have the strength to carry on. All of us who are watching have that strength so far in life. We have made decisions, we have worked our way through problems, we have faced difficult things, and yet we are still here to watch this video. We did not make that decision at some point. I often wonder for how many people that actually was a decision. If we were really honest with ourselves, how many people have never thought, what would the world be like if I wasn't in it? How many people have really never ever thought to themselves, I don't know if I have the strength to get through whatever's happening. I don't know if I can handle what comes next. I don't know if I can face the mistakes that I have made or the betrayals that I have faced at the hands of others. Probably all of us have had, even if it's just a fleeting thought, of I wonder how people would do if I wasn't here. Death is a part of life. When I say death and taxes, that happen to everyone. And it's something that we need to acknowledge. Lately, in Canada anyway, we have this thing called MAID, medical assistance in death. And people have been equating that to suicide. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice when we do that. Because for someone who is looking for, it's not euthanasia. It's a different thing altogether. But it's a recognition that there might come a time in one's life when an illness, whether it's physical or mental, can become so debilitating that we have no desire to continue living in that way. I'm thinking, for instance, of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, where people are physically unable to do anything, including communicate, and yet their brains are completely functional. What kind of hell must it be to know that you can't itch your own nose? You can't, you know, wipe your own nose. You can't cover your mouth for a cough. You can't scratch the itch you have from that mosquito bite on your butt because your body will not do what your brain is telling it to do, and you can't communicate with anyone else. You can't say to them just by using your eyes, this is what I need. You can't even say to them, I love you, or I don't love you, leave me alone. What kind of hell would it be to live like that? And medical insistence in dying allows people to make a decision about how, at what point do they say it's time for this to end. Topic for another day. Suicide is the end one person choosing to end their own life. And quite often we don't look at suicide as, most times I think we don't look at suicide as that thing that happens when a person has just come to the point where they're like, you know what, I'm done. Lived a good life. I'm going to say goodbye now. Most times when we think of suicide, we think in terms of despair, shame, remorse, loneliness, all of those things that speak of a deep and dark place within our souls that lead a person to say, I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to end the pain and the loneliness or the despair, and I'm going to take my own life. We do such a disservice when we judge them. When someone has died by suicide, we can't bring them back. And judging them and putting them down or denigrating the life that they lived or cursing them for doing that may help us in the moment. And maybe that's okay, that in those moments we might need that anger and that release because someone close to us has ripped themselves from our lives before we were ready for them to go. So I understand that anger, but we cannot live in that anger. We have to get to that point where we can say to ourselves, I cannot know the depths of despair that was in that person's life. I can only know that they would not have done this unless they thought it was their only solution. And then they deserve our empathy. They deserve our love. They deserve for us to carry the good memories, to love them in death as we love them in life. Suicide has touched my life way too many times than I care to admit. I have known people my own age through the years who have died by suicide. My husband has faced suicide so many times. People that he has worked with, people that he has tried to help, people who, more often than not, he was called into the situation after the fact. And he has been left to be the one who takes care of their service, their funeral service, and works with the units, because they've been military, the units, the members of the military that they have left behind, their roommates, their classmates, their unit mates, their families, their friends. I blame my husband's heart issues on the latest one he dealt with last March. Whether it's true or not, maybe I just need something to blame, but it was something that he should never have had to face. And yet he made the decision that he would face it so that his padres, the people who work for him, could go and help other people dealing with it, but not have to face it directly. He took the brunt of it. And I give thanks for him for that, because he was able to help those people who were witnesses and help those people who had to deal with the aftermath. And that is because my husband is a strong and faithful man, and he is an incredible priest and padre. But it takes its toll. I've also had to deal with suicide in my family. My uncle, for whom my hope bear Fred was named, died way too young. And his nephew, my cousin, took his life a week later. And my thinking is that part of that was because my uncle was like a father to him. Father he lost at a very, very young age. And Uncle Fred was the person who took care of him and taught him and encouraged him and loved him and called on him to become the best person he could be. And for Dale, I think he just couldn't face what life would be like without that and other things that were going on. And just a few years before that, my cousin David also died by suicide and left behind many great memories and people who loved him, and we gathered around one another. But suicide leaves a hole. It leaves a place in the life of the lives of the people who loved them. And I do not blame them. I do not blame the person who died by suicide a year ago. I don't. When I think of my cousins, David and Dale, I don't think in anger. I think in compassion and hope. My hope bear, Fred. I think of them in peace, because although my heart is broken and missing them and their children and their spouses and the people and their families that they left behind, their hearts are broken for loving them. We were loved by them, and our lives were ever blessed by them. We need to learn how to talk about suicide. We need to be able to have conversations with people that might help them realize that maybe that's not a step they need to take. Maybe by having people that they feel comfortable with talking to about the possibility of that decision, they will not feel oppressed or put down or shunned or poo-pooed, like, oh no, don't do that. Nothing's that bad. But if they have the opportunity to say, this is what I'm thinking, this is where I am, then maybe that alone would be that which kept them from moving toward that. I don't know. Or maybe even if they still made that decision, they would at least know in making that decision that they were loved, and that when the time came, they would know that as they left this mortal coil to enter into eternity with God, that they would do so knowing that they left behind people who loved them and who would remember them and in whom they would go on living. We also need to learn how to have conversation about what happens when people were buried in unhallowed ground because they had committed a sin, that they weren't going to go to heaven. I could be wrong, and when the time comes and St. Peter and I get to have a great chat at those pearly gates, I hope I'm not wrong. But I don't believe that because someone died by their own hand, that God would simply say, you are not welcome here. I think probably those are the people God would just say, my child, I am so sorry that you hurt so badly. Come into my arms and let me hold you. And when you're ready, we'll continue this journey together. The priest, the 44-year-old priest who killed herself, who died by suicide in England a week ago, was loved. She was admired. She was looked up to. She was a teacher. She was a preacher. She was a celebrant of the Eucharist. She had all kinds of things that we could look at her and say she had so much to live for. But we could not be in her mind. My prayer is that people who are around her family will be encouraging and will speak stories of her that make people laugh that will remind her family how much she impacted their lives in positive ways, and that she will go on living in their lives just as anyone else who dies that we remember. My prayer for all of you and for myself is that we will learn how to be a kind and compassionate and caring community, society, in which we help people recognize that maybe if they are thinking about suicide, maybe we can give them a reason to think again. And that we can also be for them friends and people who give hope, who offer some peace. That if indeed that is the decision they make, that we will continue to love them and that we will honor their memories by carrying forward all of the things in which they were good in this life. That they will be remembered and their families will be able to remember them. No good comes from shaming those who have had to deal with suicide. When we shame those who have died by suicide, we shame their families and those who love them. We make them have to apologize or not talk about how they're feeling because this is a shameful act. If we can let go of the shame and recognize the humanity and recognize that maybe those folks who have chosen to take their own life maybe couldn't find their own hope. Maybe didn't have a little Fred Hope Bear. Maybe we can make the world a better place for those who are left. I know this is a tough topic, but if we don't talk about the tough things, we will never be able to deal with them. So if you have had someone in your life who died by suicide, or if you've had times when you have thought about that yourself, may God bless you and hold you and bring you hope. May you not feel shame, but may you feel love. And for those of you who maybe this has never really crossed your mind or you're not aware of it, be listening and be alert to how you talk about it and how you hear it, and to those people that you see and deal with in school or in life or at work or in your neighborhood. Be gentle, because this is something that affects people around the world. And probably everybody, by the time they hit a certain age, has dealt with it in some way, shape, or form. And we need to not be judgmental. We need not to be mean. We need to not start shunning people or telling them, their families, that they've gone to hell. They haven't. They have received into the arms of God. Any sin that they have committed has been forgiven. Their death is not the sin that they've been forgiven of. But the Holy Spirit will wrap them in comfort and hope and joy and a peace that they didn't know in this life, but that we can, I hope, celebrate that they are now experiencing in the life to come. So today, as I go about my day and think about Anna's family, that's the woman who died by suicide, and I remember my Uncle Fred and my cousins who are now living in peace and hope and joy in eternity. I pray that this day for me will be one that is filled with moments of joy, moments that I would think to myself, oh, I'd love to tell them about this, and then do it. Talk to Dale and David and my Uncle Fred and my grandparents and everybody else who's gone before me, and share with them the beauty of this life we have, and trust that one day we will be reunited, where we will share in a beauty that we can't even explain. If you are struggling with thoughts of suicide, please reach out and ask someone for help. Call your local health networks, call your local police department, call a friend, call someone. Reach out and ask for help. And know that as you do so, or if you struggle to not reach out for help, know that you are loved. You are loved. Have a good day. God bless you. And tomorrow I will try to do a Friday funny. God bless you.